and welcome back to my channel. Today's video, I'm talking about all the horror movies I watched last month. I had a nice variety of horror and thriller movies last month. Some older films, some cult classic films, some first time watches, some disturbing films, and some hidden gems on Netflix. So let's get started. I am sweating. We started off the month with Coming Home in the Dark, which is a 2021 film about a family who are on a road trip and their trip is interrupted when these two vagrants, I guess, interrupt their trip and hold them hostage. This one is incredibly violent, shockingly violent. I didn't expect it to be as violent as it was, and it has an interesting story about abuse and trauma and the long-term effects of that. I just thought it was a really dark, gritty road movie slash hostage situation, and it surprised me. And it's on Netflix, and not that many people are talking about it, but it's pretty good. Then I watched Master from 2022. This is currently streaming on Amazon Prime. So this one is centered at an elite New England school that is predominantly white, and it centers on two black women who are navigating their time there. One is a woman who is pretty established in her career at this point, and she's been recently named the school's master. And the other one is a student who is trying to fit in with her classmates, and it just highlights the everyday horrors that black people often face. It highlights the microaggressions that they have to deal with, and it's just these characters are put into horrifying situations, and then there's additional like horror ghost stuff that's happening too. I thought Regina Hall gives a powerful performance in this, and not enough people are talking about this one. It feels very much like Get Out. Then I watched The Serpent and the Rainbow for the first time. This is from 1988. So this is a Wes Craven horror film about an anthropologist from Harvard who's sent to Haiti to uncover this mysterious drug that can turn people into living zombies. This one is kind of slow. It was slow for me, but it has some really intense, disturbing moments, and there's moments of claustrophobia because there's characters who are being buried alive, and it has some really good nightmare scenes, which is funny because Wes Craven did A Nightmare on Elm Street. It definitely feels like A Nightmare on Elm Street in Haiti. Then I watched The Funhouse from 1981. This is a Tobe Hooper film about a group of teens who sneak into a funhouse after hours to have a little fun with each other, and they witness a murder, and then they get trapped inside with the murderer. And the murderer is like this monstrous looking creature person, and it's just really creepy, campy, over the top, and it feels like Texas Chainsaw Massacre set in an amusement park. Then I watched Pin from 1988. This one was so weird. This is based on a novel of the same name, and this one really surprised me. So it's about these two kids who live in this very sheltered home with parents who are very strict, and they expect their kids to abide by certain rules. They can't have friends over because they'll get the house dirty, and their father is a doctor, and so they have kind of an abusive, loveless home. And the father, he brings the kids into his doctor's office, and he has this anatomically correct medical dummy, and he uses the dummy to teach the kids about sex and all that stuff. One of the kids, the son, develops a really close relationship with Pin, the mannequin. One day, when he sneaks into his father's office, he witnesses something horrific happening to Pin. It's very traumatizing to him, and it has an effect, a long-lasting effect on him into adulthood. He has a lot of issues with sex and women, and it's just a really unique look at trauma. And the stuff with the mannequin is just the creepiest stuff I've ever watched. It's shocking, and it felt bold and like stuff that I wouldn't see today. Like, they wouldn't do something like this today. It seems too out there and bizarre. It wasn't what I was expecting at all, but I really enjoyed it. It was on YouTube for free at the time, so because I don't think it's streaming anywhere else right now, so I highly recommend you go check it out. Then I watched See For Me on Shudder. This is a new release. It's about a woman who is blind. She has been trying to make money, and she's been taking jobs as like cat sitters or babysitters, and her next job is as a cat sitter for this wealthy woman. While she's there, these thieves break into the house, and she calls this app called See For Me, which connects her to a person that can see and acts as her eyes, and she kind of partners up with this person to navigate through the house and get away from the guys. I thought it was a really interesting concept. It's like Hush, but the character's blind, and the actress actually is blind in real life, so that was interesting. Then I watched Choose or Die on Netflix, and this one is about a young woman who's kind of down on her luck. She's poor, she lives with a mom who's struggling, and I think they had a death in the family, so there's a lot of turmoil there. And one day she gets this mysterious invite to play this horror game that's kind of like a choose your own adventure style game, and if she plays, she can win a ton of money. But when she starts playing the game, she realizes that her actions in the game affect things in the real world, and people start dying. This one I actually had a lot of fun with. I didn't go into it with super high expectations. It felt like a late 90s, early 2000s throwback to films like Brain Scan, which is a very similar concept, Stay Alive. It also gave me elements of The Ring with this cursed video game. It's kind of like the cursed tape. It was just fun. I didn't think it was too bad. I mean, it wasn't the best. I didn't think the acting was amazing. There was one particular sequence that really stood out to me where the character she's communicating with her mom via phone, and she has the game in front of her, and the game is like her apartment setting, and her mom is the player in the game, and there's a rat in the house with the mom, but this rat is huge, and the mom is screaming for help on the phone. It was just really well executed to me, and it was like very intense and creepy, and I really liked that. Then I watched The Cellar on Shudder. This is an Irish horror movie about a family who moves into this new home, and there's something off with the cellar. And one day when the mom is at work, she calls home to her daughter, and I guess the power goes out. The daughter has to go down into the basement, and while she's on the phone with the mom, something happens and the girl disappears. So the mom spends the rest of the film trying to find her daughter and figure out what's the deal with this house. There's a lot of stuff going on. I was really bored. Actually, I was excited going into it because it stars Alicia Cuthbert. I love her. I like Irish folky horror, and I was bored for most of the time. I thought it was pretty generic and straightforward, but then towards the end, it kind of surprised me and just became this thing I didn't expect. And it's very just bleak, and it doesn't shy away from making you upset. It's just bold. I liked where it went, but it took a little while to get there. Then I watched Dogtooth. This is one of the most disturbing movies I've watched in a long time, and not in the way that you would think. It's not overly gory or violent. It's disturbing in subject matter. So this is from director, I'm not even gonna try to pronounce his name, but it's the same director who did The Killing of a Sacred Deer, which is also really weird and disturbing. So Dogtooth centers on this family, this guy who is super abusive and controlling, and he keeps his kids inside their house and on the grounds. He never lets them leave and explore the outside world well into adulthood. So we're following this family as the kids are adults now, but they act very much like children because they don't know any better. And then they get a taste of the outside world, and they begin to try to escape to see that outside world for themselves. This one, it's extremely slow and not a lot is going on, but I could not look away. It's like a car crash. That's what somebody described it as, and that is the perfect description for it. And there's not much going on, but then there are some super disturbing stuff where the kids are learning about their bodies and learning about sex, and there's kind of forced relationships between the siblings that's very Flowers in the Attic-y, and it's just really hard to watch. And it's crazy to think that there are situations where people really shelter their kids like this, and you know, the Turpin family is one. Like, I could see something like this happening, which is what makes it scary. It's a downer, it's sad, you will not feel good after this. There's no breath of fresh air by the end of the film. It's just one note and so weird and bizarre, and just you'll be sitting there just not knowing how to feel. It's on Tubi. I highly recommend it if you're into disturbing movies. But yeah, let me know if you've watched this one and what your thoughts are. It made me feel so dirty. And then lastly, I finished off the month with a found footage horror on Tubi that was recommended to me by a few people. It's called The Borderlands, and it's also known as The Final Prayer. This one knocked my socks off. It surprised me by how excellent it was. So it follows these two men who are sent by the Vatican to this small small village where some religious miracles are happening at this church. So they send these two people to go investigate. One is a priest who has some history with the Vatican, and I think some bad things have happened, and you kind of learn what his past is throughout the film. And then there's like this engineer guy who's there to help with filming. At first I was very nervous because one of the guys, his personality is very off-putting, but then over the course of the film you really get to know these two characters and bond with them and like them. It seems like a very straightforward religious horror, but then the final act, I cannot tell you anything more, but just know that that final act shocked the shit out of me. I was blown away because I didn't expect it to go there, and then it's just like you're left there with that just horrible feeling, that heaviness in your chest. I highly recommend this one if you're a fan of found footage. If you love religious horror, this one I think will make your favorites list. It was so good, and thank you to everybody who recommended this one to me. So those are all the horror movies I watched in April. We're currently in May, and we have a ton of horror movies coming out this month. As I'm filming this, The Sadness just premiered on Shudder, which is supposedly a super intense, disturbing zombie movie that has been getting a ton of hype. I'm really nervous to watch it, but I'm gonna check it out. Firestarter is coming out. We have The Innocents coming out. We have Men from A24. There are so many movies releasing this month, so hopefully I'll have some more stuff to talk about in my next wrap-up video. Let me know what horror movies and thrillers you've been watching lately. If you watched any of the movies that I talked about, let me know your thoughts. Thank you so much for watching, guys. I'll catch you next time. Bye.